Welcome to Money Muscle Mindset, the podcast designed to motivate and educate you on your journey to financial and fitness success and to develop the mentality needed to achieve your goals. I'm Zay Molina, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the positive side of stress and why stress isn't necessarily the enemy, but how it can help us grow and evolve. So many people immediately think stress is a bad thing, right? And they try to eliminate stress. But in reality, stress is not what holds you back. Stress is not what breaks you, right? Resisting it does. So today, we're going to dive deeper into how we can interpret stress a little bit differently and how we can use it to help us adapt and evolve. So without further ado, let's dive in. So let's first talk about what stress really is, right? Stress is pressure that triggers adaptation. Let me say it one more time. Stress is pressure that triggers adaptation. Now, what does that actually mean? Basically, when we feel stressed in our lives, right, whether it's financial, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, right, and we start to feel that overwhelming pressure of this is a lot right now, I can't take it, I have so much things to do, or this weight is super heavy, or whatever it may be, guys, that is not necessarily a bad thing that's trying to hold us back, but that stress is basically signaling to us that this is outside our comfort zone. So your body and your brain are not trying to hurt you. They're just simply signaling you that, hey, this is something different. This is something new that we're not used to. That's it. That's all stress really is. Think about it in terms of your fitness journey, right? When you're at the gym and you're lifting heavy weights, right? And your muscles are starting to burn, right? That physical stress is what actually triggers growth. When you're lifting that heavy weight in the gym, what you're actually doing is causing micro tears in the muscle fibers, right? That's where that stress is. You're pushing those muscles to do something it's not used to. And so what happens after that? When you're at home and you're resting and you're sleeping or you're eating and recovering, right? Your muscles are now going back and say, okay, we have a lot of micro tears in our muscles right now. We need to come back and put these back together. And so when you're at the gym and you're lifting those heavy weights, you're ripping those muscles apart, causing those micro tears, right? But when you're recovering and you're resting, right? Your muscles are now saying, hey, we need to go in and we need to fill in those gaps. But they don't go back to exactly where they were. They go back in and they start to fill in, but they start to expand. They start to create more muscle fibers, right? Because now what are they saying? Your body's saying that was hard last time, trying to lift that weight. I don't want to say that that was hard again, right? I want to come back stronger, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to fill in those gaps of those microfibers and we're going to build new ones, right? We're going to expand. We're going to create these muscles to be stronger. So next time when we go under something like that, right, we're able to do it a little bit better, right? It's going to be a little bit easier, right? And that is the goal behind muscle growth. You have to actually put your muscles under that physical stress to tear them apart so they can start building back stronger so you can start lifting heavier weights. Think about stress when it comes to finances, right? Maybe your bank account was low right now. It's not where you want it to be, right? And you start freaking out. Maybe I can't pay this. Maybe I can't pay that. I wish I had more money, right? And all this financial stress is starting to hit you. Most people look at this as a bad thing and they start looking for things to blame and all this kind of stuff, right? But in reality, right, this pressure, this stress that's hitting you right now in your finances, it may be teaching you something of, maybe I can budget a little bit better, right? Maybe I can go out and find a side hustle. Maybe I can do something that's going to push myself, something I'm not used to, but maybe I can go out there and do something that's going to help me create more money. Maybe it's going to help me learn how to manage my money a little bit better, right? And so this stress, instead of looking at it as something as bad and, oh my gosh, I don't have money, I need someone to blame, all this kind of stuff, right? Maybe look at it as, okay, what is this trying to teach me? How can I go out there and get better? How can I make more money and manage my money a little bit better so I'm never in this situation again? And same thing when it comes to your mindset, right? Maybe you're trying to learn a new language or you're trying to do a challenging task, right? That's going to push you, right? When you start to feel that stress and you don't know what to do, you don't know the answer, right? It starts to ignite your thinking skills to help you think a little bit stronger, find creative ways to come up with the answer, right? And so that stress of not knowing the answer and trying to solve this difficult task, whether it's a trivia question or anything like that, right? You're going to push yourself to find that answer and you're going to think in different ways. And it's because that stress is challenging you to come up with different answers, to come up with different ideas to find that answer. And so when we look at stress, guys, again, it's not immediately a bad thing, right? It's something that's pushing ourselves to grow and develop. And so this stress can help us actually become better overall. And there was actually research done in 2013 by the American Psychological Association that found that moderate stress can actually improve your performance and your focus. And so when you look at stress this way, it's actually a concept known as eustress, which basically means stress that is beneficial. And what this eustress does is, again, it's not looking at stress as a bad thing, but something that's going to help us increase motivation, increase performance, increase our focus, increase our intelligence, right? Because we are looking at this as not a bad thing that we're trying to avoid, but how can we take this stress and say, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we grow and how can we get better by using this stress that's in our lives right now? And I know a lot of us, right, we learned immediately that stress was bad. This is something that everyone complained about. The stress was holding us back, right? We are overwhelmed. All these kind of things we are associated with stress always are usually bad. And it's usually because when you feel stress, right, you don't really feel good, right? In the moment, you feel what? discomfort, right? You are feeling like this is something that you're not used to, you can't handle, right? So you immediately associate this as bad, right? But in reality, guys, you got to start to interpret this a little bit differently. We need to look at stress as this is what's going to help us grow, right? Think about it this way, right? Let's say you play in a video game, right? And you're playing a shooter game, for example, and you're shooting and you're hitting all of your targets, right? And you're hitting it with ease, right? Nothing, there's no challenge at all. You're just hitting these targets, every shot, 100%, never missing, right? And you beat the game in a matter of minutes, right? Is that going to be a fun game? Most likely not, right? If you can beat a game that easily, right, you're going to get bored very soon and you're going to want to move on to something else, right? But if you find that you're in a game and you're finding it very difficult to hit these targets, right, and you have to try over and over again, yes, it may be frustrating at times, right? But when you actually accomplish this and you start to get better and you're able to hit these targets and move on to the next checkpoint, move on to the next level, right? What's happening, right? You feel more fulfilled. You feel more motivated, right? And now you're ready to take on the new challenge, right? So these challenges that we face in our lives, yes, they can be hard. Yes, they can be stressful. Yes, they can be discomforting, right? But at the end of the day, this is what's going to help us get better so we can then move on to that next checkpoint, to that next level in the video game, right? But also in our lives. When you find yourself under stress and you find yourself, facing a new challenge, right? Yes, it's not going to be easy to overcome. And that's the point, right? It's now time for you to evolve and reach a new level so you can then accomplish this challenge, right? And now you're adapting, now you're growing, right? So again, instead of looking at and automatically labeling all discomfort as bad and stress as bad, right? Look at it as that challenge that's going to help you, evolve to the next level, right? Move on to the next checkpoint, right? And when you look at it that way, right, this stress is no longer going to be a feeling that's overwhelming and holding you back, right? But now you're looking at it as, okay, this is a new challenge. What can I do? What are different things that I can start to implement so I can get past this challenge and move on to the next task? Stress is not necessarily harmful, right? Stress is only harmful when you believe it's harmful, right? When you look at this challenge and let's say you have a lot of work you got to do by the end of this deadline, by the end of this week, right? And you're freaking out saying, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. This is so much work. There's no way I can get this done, right? Now it becomes harmful because now you're believing it is, right? You believe that it's impossible to get this done. So you don't think of different ways to get past this, right? And you start complaining and you're just holding yourself back from actually accomplishing the task at hand. But when you start to believe that, okay, stress is not harmful, right? Stress is something that's going to push me to grow and develop, right? Now I'm looking at these tasks. Okay, this is a lot of work. How can I get this done, right? Well, maybe I can use AI. Maybe I can get some friends to help. Maybe I can get some coworkers to help me out, right? Maybe I can do this by instead of going out tonight, maybe I can stay home and get an extra few hours of work done, right? Maybe I can start coming up with all these different ideas. So now that I get it done, and when you do, you feel more accomplished. You feel more fulfilled because you were able to take that stress, take that challenge head on, and you were able to complete it, even though you felt stressed, even though you felt overwhelmed. This will now increase the dopamine and the motivation in your mind to say, you know what, I've done this before. Now, next time I face a challenge like this, I know I can get it done because I've done it before, right? And now you're pushing yourself because you've overcome the stress once, you can do it again. So I know this may sound cliche, guys, but your mindset can actually dictate your psychological response, right? When you believe stress is harmful, it's going to be harmful. But when you believe stress is helpful, right, it can be beneficial, right? It's going to challenge you, it's going to push you, but you're going to overcome this and come back stronger than ever before, right? Whether that's physically or mentally. So again, guys, when you feel stress and you have a challenge come into your life, right? Don't think about it as something harmful, something that's holding you back, right? But try to interpret it a little bit differently, right? How can I reframe this? Instead of asking, how do I stop this stress or how do I avoid this stress, right? Think about how can I overcome this, right? What is this trying to teach me? And that's going to help you to start thinking about different ways and different things that you can do to overcome the stress. When you feel stressed, try taking a step back and asking yourself, okay, what is the stress I'm feeling? What is the challenge at hand, right? Identify the source. Is this something that's going to challenge me physically? Is this something that's going to challenge me mentally, maybe financially, right? Whatever it may be, identify that first, right? Let's talk about the gym, for example, right? Maybe you're lifting a weight and it's super heavy and you feel really fatigued after doing a few reps. Like, okay, that's my stress. Then you want to translate the signal. Okay, what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to do to help me grow and develop? Then instead of avoiding, adjust, right? Do something that can help you overcome this challenge, right? And so by kind of looking at stress this way, it's going to help you overcome challenges, right? Again, let's talk about the gym, for example, right? Maybe you're at the gym, you're lifting a heavy weight, it's starting to burn. Okay, what is the stress? Well, the stress is a physical pain. I'm trying to lift this barbell, right? And it's super heavy. It's causing my biceps to burn. Okay, that's the source, right? It's a physical stress. So what action is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to point me towards, right? Well, by lifting this barbell, right, I feel that burn. So meaning I need to get my muscles a little bit stronger. And so instead of avoiding, now we need to adjust. Okay, so this barbell is a little too heavy right now. It's burning a lot. Let me put it down. Let me get a little bit lighter, right? And I'm going to start there. I'm going to do my 10 to 12 reps, 10 to 15 reps, right? And I'm going to push myself to knock this out. And once this starts to feel lighter over time, then I can move back up to that more challenging weight and do the same thing. And boom, instead of looking at oh my gosh, this is too heavy, I just want to stop and don't want to lift this weight anymore, I looked at it and said, okay, how can I get to this point where this weight is is not too heavy, right? I'm able to identify the source. I'm able to translate the signal, and then I'm able to adjust and not avoid. Same thing when it comes to your finances. Let's say, for example, okay, right now my paycheck is not enough to pay my bills. So I'm feeling financially stressed, right? That's identifying the source. So what is this trying to teach me? What can I learn from this? Well, okay, I'm not making enough money to pay my bills. My expenses are more than my income. That's what I need to learn, and that's what I need to overcome. That's the real challenge, okay? So how do I adjust? How do I not avoid this? How do I adjust? Well, maybe there's some expenses that I have that I can cut back, right? I don't need all these subscriptions to these streaming services, right? I don't need to DoorDash 5 times a week, right? Whatever it may be. But now I'm looking for solutions to my problem. And instead of being stressed out and freaking out, saying, oh my gosh, how am I going to make more money? This is crazy. I don't know what to do. I'm now looking at it as a reasonable explanation of, okay, how can I solve this problem, right? How can I use this stress to push me to evolve and develop? Because now maybe I'm cutting back some of my expenses, or maybe I'm increasing my income. Maybe I find a side hustle that's helping me earn an extra $100, $500, $1,000 a month, right? And so I'm looking at this and I'm building my income, I'm decreasing my expenses. And then let's say, for example, you get a raise at your job and now your paycheck's gone up even higher. And now that you had this problem of my expenses are too high for my income, now it's completely flipped. And now you don't necessarily need to raise your expenses again. But the idea is now that your income is well above your expenses, you solve this problem and you learn from it. And now that you're making even more money, right? You don't go back to your bad ways of DoorDashing 5 times a week or spending all this money on these streaming services that you don't even watch, right? You have now learned and you've now grown to say, you know what? I have increased my income. That's great, but I don't need to necessarily increase my expenses, right? I know how to manage my money a little bit better. And that's what that initial stress of I don't have enough money is teaching you. And it helped you learn, you know what? I need to manage my money a little bit better moving forward. So again, guys, don't immediately look at stress as this bad thing. Yes, you might have that initial reaction. We're all human. We get emotional, right? But after you feel that, take a step back and say, okay, how can I overcome this, right? And look at stress a little bit differently, right? Try to reframe it as stress is not a bad thing. It's trying to teach me something that's going to help me grow and develop. So again, guys, stress is not the enemy. Look at the positive side of stress. Instead of immediately feeling stress and trying to freak out and starting to blame and avoid it, right? Look at it as, okay, this stress is just pressure causing adaptation. How can I adapt? How can I evolve? How can I push myself to the next level so I can overcome these challenges? And so next time I face a challenge like this, it's not stressful. I know how to get past this. So with that being said, that's what I got for you guys on this episode. Again, guys, the positive side of stress, not looking at stress as a bad thing, but looking at it as pressure that's going to help us adapt. I hope you guys gained some value from this episode. And with that, I'm going to leave you guys as I always do. Remember, success isn't just about the money you make or the muscles you build. It's also about the mindset you develop along the way. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Money Muscle Mindset.